Okay, hi guys. So Derek just took the big kids off to swimming lessons and the little kids are in bed and I'm feeding her. So I thought this was a good time to film a quick video about the books that I read in, well, I guess it would just be March and a little bit of February. I was a little disappointed in my reading tallies for this month. I thought I should have been able to read a few more books than I did. I'm like halfway through several more. But I don't know, it is what it is. So I'll just tell you what I got. All right, let's just start by getting this one out of the way. So I read A Wrinkle in Time for the first time this month, and this is going to be a really unpopular opinion, but I was not a huge fan. And it wasn't because of the writing or the imaginativeness, because it was, is that a word? I might have made up that word. It was very imaginative. I really did enjoy the story overall. It was more for like theological, philosophical reasons. I didn't like, as a Christian, I didn't like how they presented Jesus in this story as just a fighter against evil. That's not what Christians believe about Jesus. Jesus is God, and they threw a bunch of other Christian elements into it, but I felt like they also threw in a lot of occultic symbols in this book, and I didn't like the mix. I don't like that. I don't like mixing Christianity with other religions. I don't think that's sound. So the doctrine in this kind of concerned me. I wouldn't really actually hand it to my kids, so I was actually a little bit disappointed in this. It wasn't all that I wanted it to be. The story was okay. I wouldn't say it was like fantastic though. Like I've heard it compared to Chronicles of Narnia, and no, just no. So that's my unpopular opinion of the month. Let's see, what else did I read? I read this month, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. So I've never read this one either. I'm trying to read more classics that I have never read this year. So this one, if you don't know anything about it, it's about a girl named Francie who's growing up in Brooklyn in like the early 1900s, and she's Irish, I believe. And it was a good story. I really liked it. I would not give this to teenagers necessarily though, because there was a lot more sex in it than I was expecting. Not explicit or anything, but just a lot more sexual references than I thought would be in this book. But the story was just really good, and I really fell in love with the characters. Even though they were so flawed, I felt like they were just really realistic. Like I could picture these being real people, and even though they had their flaws, I don't know, there's something about the characters was really just made me fall in love with them in this book. Particularly Francie and her dad. I just really liked that relationship. I guess because even though he had so many problems, it just was so like sweet how they had such a great relationship. So I liked this book. It was good. I don't know. I still am struggling over the star rating on this book. It was good. Let's see. Okay, I think the rest I don't have physical copies of, so I'll just have to tell you what I thought of them.
Hey guys.
Okay, sorry, I was interrupted for a minute. Now Derek's leaving. I thought he had left already, but he didn't. Okay, so I think in my last video, I had just started My Cousin Rachel, and I finished it, and it was great. I loved it. It was not a book where you can root for the characters, let's just say that, but it was really interesting to speculate about what really happened, because this is one of those books where the author does not tell you what really happened, which I normally wouldn't like, but I really liked this one. So I'm getting together with a couple people even to discuss it soon, just because I said that I was reading it and a bunch of other people jumped in and read it too, so that's going to be fun. All right, next book that I read was When Is It Right to Die by Joni Eareckson Tada. I live in a state that has legalized assisted suicide, and so this is kind of a hot topic. I wanted to read this book because I really trust Joni Eareckson Tada's thoughts on this kind of subject. If you don't know about her, she's a quadriplegic, so she's had a lot of time to think about these kind of issues, and I thought this book was excellent. I thought she addressed everything in a really biblical way and kept it kept to the truth of God's word and wasn't compromising, but also just had so much compassion for people who find themselves in this kind of situation where they might be considering assisted suicide, or even just considering like end of life decisions, like how long to be on life support and things like that that you wouldn't normally think of. This book was really good, and I also found it personally helpful, especially toward the end, thinking about some of those end of life things and like legally what you should do to make sure your wishes are carried out the way you wanted them to be carried out, instead of putting your fate in the doctor's hands, getting those documents in order so that your loved ones know what they should do. So anyway, I thought that was really good and thought-provoking. Just an excellent book about those kind of issues if you're interested. It's not light reading, but there it is. Okay, and then what else did I read? Oh, I read this cute little book called The Wishtree. And this is like a little middle grade novel. I read it in like an afternoon. It didn't take me long at all. It was cute. I liked it. I guess, I'm trying to think. It wasn't like fantastic, but it was really cute. I don't know. I just thought it was sweet. It was just a little story about basically kind of just like friendship, but it's written from the perspective of a tree. So this tree has been growing for 100 years, whatever, and observing all these things, and it was just cute, and like the little jokes and things that they were telling about how the trees talk to the animals and what the animals say, and like how the animals name their children. It was just really quirky and funny. I just thought it was funny. All right. Next one I read was What Came from the Stars by Gary D. Schmidt. I really like Gary Schmidt. I love The Wednesday Wars and Okay for Now. I read them last year, and they're probably up there on my favorites list of books. I just really liked them. So I was curious to read more of what he had written. So I picked this one up, and this one was like wild. It was kind of a mix between like I don't even know how to explain it, like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, and I don't know. That sounds weird, but it was really good. So it was like Lord of the Rings meets Star Wars meets middle grade, middle school drama. So if that makes any sense at all, it was cute. I liked it. It wasn't like my favorite of his, but it was fun to read and I enjoyed it. So that could be a fun one. I would probably not give it to like a young middle grade child, just because some of the things that happen in it are a little bit scary, but overall I thought it was fun. Okay, next book I read was, I listened to this one, and it was Bachelor Nation. I can't get the subtitle here. Let me see. Inside the World of America's Favorite Guilty Pleasure. So I do watch The Bachelor. I get sucked into that show. It's not the best thing, but it's fun to kind of, I guess I watch it because I like to analyze my shows. So if there's a show where I can kind of analyze everybody's behavior, I'm kind of all about that. I just think it's fun. But I read this book, and I listened to it, I should say. It wasn't good. I didn't really like it. I don't know. I've read better books about the Bachelor stuff. This one did give a lot of guest information, like background information about some seasons of the show. Half the book was talking about the producers and their lives and stuff, which I didn't really care about that much, to be honest. And it also just made me not like what goes on behind the scenes of the show. Like, if these are the kind of people that are producing it, makes me not want to watch as much. But I didn't like it. And then I guess at least a couple chapters were her just ranting about, low battery. Were her just ranting about, like, how it's basically just bemoaning the fact that the Bachelor show doesn't fit into her feminist worldview, so why does she love it so much? And I just couldn't relate to that, because I don't consider myself a feminist in the modern sense at all, so I don't know, I couldn't relate to it. And there's a lot of cussing in this book too. Honestly, if I hadn't been working on a different project while I was listening to it, and so I was half distracted most of the time, I probably wouldn't even finish this book. So I don't know, it wasn't very good. And then I read Answers for Homeschooling. The subtitle is Top 25 Questions Critics Ask. So I would say this book is more geared toward people who already know they're going to homeschool. I didn't really think it was trying to convince somebody to homeschool necessarily. That's not how I viewed this book. I think it was written more for moms that are new homeschool moms, or people who know they will homeschool and are maybe dealing with some concerns from people in their life, that kind of thing. I thought his answers were all pretty much spot on. There's a few little things here and there that I was not 100% sure I agreed with, but overall I thought it was really good. It's written from a Christian perspective, so I thought everything he said seemed pretty biblical, and I just didn't have really many complaints with it. I feel like if you're not a homeschooler, you probably shouldn't necessarily read this book, because it's definitely geared toward people who are already homeschooling. There's probably better books for you to start with. It's just all I'm saying. But I thought it was good, and it was very encouraging to me as a homeschool mom, especially as a newer homeschool mom. Okay, last book that I have a tiny little bit left of it, but I'm just going to go ahead and show it to you. It's The Reformation, How a Monk and a Mallet Changed the World. So this book was about Martin Luther and how the Protestant Reformation got started. And but what I thought was really interesting about this book is that it doesn't just talk about Martin Luther. It talks about like the reformers in all the European countries where the Reformation took a foothold. So it gave me so much history that I really wasn't aware of beforehand. I have highlights all over the place in this book because I just want to remember things. But it talked about like the Anabaptists. It talked about the Arminians, how that branch came off of the Reformation. It talked about, I just feel like I'm forgetting so much of it. This is one of those ones I'm definitely probably going to be referring to in the future, but just like everything in here. It talked about John Calvin. It talked about just a bunch of other more not as well-known reformers too, that I just would not even known who they were if I didn't read this book. So it was great, and it was short and easy to read and interesting to read. He writes it in a really interesting way. It's Stephen J. Nichols if you want to look it up, but it was great. I highly recommend it. The last little bit, I read all the main part of the book. The last little bit is some quotes from Puritan writers, like some pieces of their writing, like their actual writing. So it's like an appendix. So I haven't read through that, but I read the rest of it, and it was excellent. So I highly recommend this one. And that's it. Just to finish off this video, I thought I would show you a book that I just got in the mail that I'm excited to read, and I think I'm going to try to read it in the next month or so. And that's Emily of New Moon. So I'm an Anna Green Gables fan, just like everybody I know. And I've heard this one's good. I don't know. I have the ebook, but I decided if I'm going to read it, I really just would rather read a paper copy. So I ordered it, and this was a really pretty edition. It was the Virgo Modern Classics. So I just thought it was pretty, and I'm excited to read this one. I think I'm going to make this my spring book. I'm also hoping to get to The Secret Garden in the next month or so, because it just seems like a good book to read in the spring. So, and I've never read it, because there's a lot of classics that I've never read, and I don't know how that happened, but I'm going to read that one too. So that's my plan, and I hope you all are having a good evening, and I'm going to go put the kiddos to bed, and then she's asleep. Oh, so cute. I'm going to put her to bed, and then I'm going to see if I can get some reading in while Derek's off with the big kids for swimming. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.